For decades, the moon was treated like a monument, something we visited, photographed, and left behind. But suddenly the language has changed. Now the moon isn't just a destination. It's going to be infrastructure, power grids, permanent presence, and most strangely of all, a projected nuclear reactor scheduled for deployment by 2030. When you start tracing the policies, the timelines, and the global competition surrounding the moon, you realize this isn't random. Something is being built, and the date 2030 keeps coming up again and again. What are they not telling us? Let's break it down.
You're watching The Big Picture.
Earlier this year, an explosive article surfaced. The United States has now stated that they plan to, quote, build a nuclear power reactor on the moon by 2030. This is not just a proposal. It's not a study, but this is an organized, intended plan. The project is being developed jointly by NASA and the U.S. Department of Energy. Now, the stated goal is simple but staggering: to provide continuous, reliable power for a permanent human presence on the lunar surface. Now, let's look at this article here on universemagazine.com. NASA plans to build a nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030. These are not conspiracy sites, by the way. These are absolute facts. NASA and the Department of Energy has announced the renewal of the partnership on a project to develop a space nuclear reactor. It is intended to use in the Artemis program. Of course, we know the Artemis program is their return to the moon and future missions to Mars. NASA has been working on a nuclear reactor project for a long time, which could be used to provide energy to bases on the surface of the moon and Mars. The main advantage of such a system is that it will be able to generate electricity for many years without the need for refueling. Unlike solar power plants, it would not be subject to factors such as the long 14-day lunar night, and in case of Mars, changing weather conditions and dust storms. This is not just about putting flags on the moon and footprints anymore. This is being promoted as something tied to survival. Now, there's some key facts that you need to know about it. I just alluded to it in that article. And the reason they're saying that they need nuclear power on the moon is because the moon experiences something very interesting. It has 14 days of continuous daylight, followed by 14 days of total darkness. Solar power alone would never be able to sustain life on the moon, operations or infrastructure through those 2-week lunar nights. Batteries are not enough. Backup systems are not enough. If humans are going to live on the moon, some say they already are there, but yeah, whatever. If they're going to visit, that's one thing. But if they're going to live there, they're going to need what's known as baseload power. And that is where nuclear enters the conversation. A small fission reactor can power habitats, support life support systems, enable mining and manufacturing, run communications nonstop, and operate independently of sunlight. In short, nuclear power is the difference between a science experiment and a colony on the lunar surface. NASA has already tested compact fission systems designed specifically for space. The technology exists, the engineering pathway exists. What's new is the timeline certainty. The question has to be asked, why? The article makes clear that the reactors being developed is with a 2030 target horizon. That date matters because once you place a permanent power source on the moon, everything changes. The moon becomes now, with a permanent power source, a staging ground for Mars, a logistic hub for deep space, a strategic high ground above Earth, a contested asset, not a neutral body. And by the way, when they refer to a strategic high ground above Earth, I think what they're really trying to say is that they would have a quote unquote, not just bird's eye, but a galaxy eye view of any extraterrestrials that may be coming in to our system. See, this is where geopolitics begins to enter when you start talking about the 2030 date. But only because the moon itself demands it. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that you need to know about. The first thing I want to show you is this video here talking about the topic at hand,
Hey, everybody, we're going to the moon. That's according to Transportation Secretary and interim NASA Administrator Sean Duffy. The space agency is fast-tracking a plan to build a nuclear reactor there, and the goal is to be ready to launch by the first quarter of 2030.
If we're going to engage in the race to the moon and the race to Mars, we have to get our act together. We have to marshal all of our resources, all of our focus on going to the moon, which is what we're going to do.
Trevor Shirley joins us this morning. And Trevor, a lot of people hear nuclear reactor on the moon? What, are you kidding me?
That's a little shocking of an idea, but apparently we've learned this had been in the works, at least in discussions, for some time. The initial plan that NASA was considering was to put a 40-kiloton nuclear reactor on the moon. Now with these new plans, we understand they're looking at a 100-kilowatt nuclear reactor to put on the moon. And the goal is to get this going operationally by the year 2030. That would put it 5 years ahead of a similar joint venture already being planned between China and Russia, certainly something that the U.S. does not want to see happening. And so they decided to accelerate these plans, try to get this reactor going by that 2030 deadline.
This is not just about getting to the moon, it's about getting to the moon first. Now, great debate out there whether we went to the moon or not, but the purpose of us rapidly escalating our attempt to get on the moon when we supposedly first went to the moon with the Saturn project and all of that was to beat the Russians, and now beat the Russians and the Chinese. So the articles say that whether we do it or not, China and Russia also have the same plans. I want to show you some executive orders that the president has been signing. Some of these have gone unnoticed by the public because they're not talked about. They're just signed, but they are on. I would encourage everyone to go to whitehouse.gov and go to the presidential actions and read all the executive orders regarding AI and space. This came out in December 18th. Let me zoom it in here for you. December 18th, 2025. Executive order by President Donald Trump ensuring American space superiority. It says leading the world in space exploration and expanding human reach and American presence in space by returning Americans to the moon by 2028 through the Artemis program, establishing initial elements of a permanent lunar outpost by 2030 to ensure a sustained American presence in space and enable the next steps of Mars exploration. Developing and demonstrating prototype next generation missile defense technologies by 2028 to progressively and materially enhance America's air and missile defense pursuant to Executive Order January 27th. So this is the Iron Dome of America, called the Golden Dome. All of this tied to space. When you start reading the fine print of this executive order, you understand that this is not just about us living up there and doing experiments. This is a military thing. What's not being reported in the news is that the Golden Dome, at least in part, is going to be operational from the moon or some type of space technology between the moon and the earth. That is in the executive order called Ensuring American Space Superiority. Now, note, as we discuss this and we go deeper, let's notice something important. The executive order doesn't create the moon strategy. It literally confirms it. It is an executive order to be on the moon by the 28th and to have a base by 2030. The nuclear reactor article explains how the executive order confirms the why. A permanent lunar presence by 2030 requires power, infrastructure, security, permanence. You cannot do that without temporary solutions. So the moon needs to be looked at as a strategic asset, not just something we look up to and study. For the first time in human history, the moon is being discussed the way continents once were. Who controls energy of the moon, launch corridors from the moon, manufacturing on the moon? These are questions and expectations being put on governments around the world. Who's going to control the moon? Who's going to control the future of space exploration? It is implying that the goal of NASA and other whether it be Russia, China, India, all these others that have some type of space program, they're believing the future of space exploration and the future launching pads of space or exploration is not Florida or Texas or some other place. It's the moon. And that's why other nations are not quietly sitting by and watching. China has openly discussed lunar power systems. Russia has proposed nuclear installations on the moon. This is not a space race like the 1960s. This is a settlement race. This is not just get there race. This is a get there and stay there race. And 2030 keeps appearing. Now, we pause because this is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The nuclear reactor plan has the date 2030. Permanent lunar outpost goals by 2030. Space infrastructure readiness by 2030. These are in the executive orders. These are in the articles. These are in the press conferences that are coming out with Sean Duffy and the joint proclamations with NASA and the Department of Energy. I'll come back to that in just a minute. This is very interesting what's happening at the Department of Energy. Now, outside of space entirely, the world already knows this date. Why? Because we've talked about it for the 3.5+ years that we have been a channel here. We have been telling you, do not forget about Agenda 2030. If you'll just take a moment to start noticing how many things you see in the news that has a 2030 goal on it, it's insane, the amount of 2030 things that are out there. So my question is, what really is the agenda? Agenda 2030 is promoted by the United Nations and World Economic Forum as the 17 sustainable goals, basically climate change and other stuff. The true Agenda 2030 is now coming to light. There's no mention of 17 sustainable Earth goals in this. They've forgot about that, or at least the Donald Trump administration is talking about, what we're worried about is we got to get to the moon by 2030. What is actually coming by 2030? If they're telling us that their goal is to have a lab up there and a launching pad and a refueling station so that we can launch to Mars, if they're telling us that, then what are they not telling us? Come on, do we not all know that we're not being told the truth? Agenda 2030, global development targets, economic transformation goals, digital governance frameworks are all pointing towards 2030. And the point that I'm trying to make is not to be conspiracy. I'm trying to tell you there is a convergence. You hear me talk about that all the time. 2026, 27, and all the way to 2030 are going to be years of convergence when governments, industries, and global institutions all choose the same horizon year. It means something big is expected to be in place by then. Now the moon is a part of that expectation. Well, there is another thing that is in play here that is rapidly accelerating, and that is AI. How is AI going to play into all this? Well, I believe that AI is absolutely tied to this. And I believe that AI is tied to our return, I did that in air quotes again, to the moon, and what is really planned. So let's remind ourselves of a couple of things. There's another executive order on December 11th that President Donald Trump signed, ensuring a national policy framework for artificial intelligence. The purpose is that it will provide the United States national and economic security and dominance across many domains. It says that this executive order will remove barriers to American leadership in artificial intelligence. I revoke my predecessor's attempt to paralyze this industry and directed my administration to remove barriers to United States AI leadership. And basically what it goes on to say, and you can read it for yourself, go to executive orders, it's on whitehouse.gov, is that it removes, at least I think maybe for a 10-year period, states' rights to limit AI advancement. Why does AI matter to the moon? Why is all this coming out just before the declaration to put a nuclear power plant on the moon? Because lunar operations will depend on autonomous systems. It will depend on AI-driven navigation, AI-controlled reactors, AI-managed logistics. There's not going to be a whole lot of people up there. Well, you watch the movies about people being on the moon. Of course, we got to have a spacesuit on. Can't breathe up there. Robots don't need that. AI doesn't need that. You don't have to take all that wasted time to put the suit on and make sure you got enough oxygen. Just walk out there. See, what they're trying to tell us is the moon cannot be run the way the Earth is run. It will be run by machines. AI is not the story. It is the operation system behind the lunar story. You don't do what they're saying they want to do by 2030 without AI. Are y'all getting this? The moon is no longer remote. The moon is only 3 days away, according to what we've been told. In geopolitical terms, that's next door. A powered, populated moon changes defense calculations, surveillance capabilities, space traffic control, resource extraction. That is why the reactor matters so much. Power equals permanence. Permanence equals authority. And that's why there is a race to settle the moon, not just to get to the moon, but to build compounds on the moon. Now, I'll take you back to another executive order that we had an entire show on, and I encourage you to go back and watch it. This is all about AI as well. But the interesting thing is the name of this one. I would think the prayer team, the spiritual advisors around them would say, hey, let's think this through, because anybody that's a part of the church that has studied end-time prophecy knows that Jesus said right before he returns and the Antichrist comes on the scene, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. And the only way you learn about Noah is you got to go back to the book of Genesis and study Noah. We're going to call it the Genesis mission, which also means beginning, new beginning. When you scroll down in here, and you can read this on the White House as well, it's full of dates. Within 30 days, it says they shall review the proposed list and working with participating agencies members. So there's a 30-day mandate. There it is. These are the dates here. Look at the urgency that's put on here. Within 90 days, the Secretary shall identify federal computing, storage, and networking resources available to support the mission, including both Department of Energy premises and cloud-based high-performance computing systems. Within 120 days, the Secretary shall identify a set of initial data and model assets to use in the mission, including digitization, standardization, metadata, and provenance tracking. Within 240 days, the Secretary shall review capabilities across the DOE, national laboratories, and other participating federal research facilities for robotic laboratories and production facilities for AI-directed experimentation and manufacturing, including automated and AI-augmented workflows for operational standard. Within 270 days of this order, the Secretary shall, consistent with applicable law and subject to available appropriations, seek to demonstrate an initial operating capability of the platform for at least one of the national science and technology challenges identified pursuant to Section 4 of this order. Let me explain to you what that means. In less than a year from this executive order, which was signed the week of Thanksgiving, the president has required AI to determine a global problem that needs to be fixed, identify the problem, run the scenarios of how to fix it, and fix it all by itself with no human participation. These executive orders are being put in place for AI to come up with the plan, robots and AI to, maybe with some human assistance, to build the infrastructure. And then when it gets to the moon, it's looking more and more like AI is going to run everything on the moon, which means AI will be running trip to Mars if that happens. Now, what I thought about, I get one more thing to show you that's very, very interesting. When I begin to read this, y'all know how big we are on Predictive program, okay? We understand what's going on here. We've been being programmed and prepared for what I'm talking about. Now, you may have not heard of this show. Sandy and I, we're big people that really always looking for predictive program. We see a trailer for a show or a movie and we're just like, okay, what are they going to tell us in that? One of those shows was on Apple TV and it was called For All Mankind. It's called that because in the original space race, that's why they said they were doing it for all mankind. Now the premise, and I won't spoil everything, This is in the trailer, so I'm not telling you anything you couldn't find on your own. The premise of the whole show, an alternate timeline. They started with the space race, and everybody's trying to get to the moon. The big difference here is that America didn't win that race. Russia did. Russia was the first one to be on the moon. They were the ones that stepped on the moon first, drove their little cars on the moon. So it was like, what would the world be if Russia beat us there? And then it's all America trying to play catch up. The whole premise is you'll see historical things go, but it will be twisted. The president that's supposed to be the president will not be the president. Nixon, I don't think, resigns or anything like that. And Kennedy, I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. I don't think he's assassinated. So it's just some interesting writing there. But ultimately, Russia and America have bases on the moon. And that's the premise of it. So we see the potential of the tension that could happen here. I just want to show you a little bit of this one scene. This is, I don't know what season this was, but Russia is already there and America is there, and they are fighting for energy. They are fighting for water, trying to find water. And there's guns. There's literally weapons on the moon. So this is what happens when the tension escalates between two foreign countries that are in the middle of the Cold War.
Lopez, you see one? You stay. Yeah, ma'am.
Right one. Switch to Russian communication frequency and order them to vacate immediately.
We'll go. Webster, take point. Get on that freak and tell you guys to get lost. Lopez.
Now I don't remember exactly, but I believe that canister they was pulling out had something to do with energy and power as well. But I can't remember.
Switching frequencies. Animania.
So she's reading a translation of what to say to the Russian officials. The American flag there. They have weapons on the moon.
For making that 1 years ago. And a fan.
We got it.
Say cool, guys.
So now you can understand what's being said. On the original show, they had the captions. They're basically saying, put your guns down, step away from the box. You can probably imagine what's about to happen. They're telling them, step away from the box.
What's she doing? What's in my case? Briefing everybody. Planning got her. I took a count.
Of course, there's no sound. But you see what happens. This creates a global meltdown. In United Nations meetings because someone has just been on the surface of the moon. What does this mean for global tensions? The reason I showed this video clip from this show, it's predictive programming. Do you think that if America, Russia, and China are all on the moon building nuclear power plants, developing launch pads to gain cosmic superiority and to be the first one to launch humans, not from the Earth, but from the moon to Mars? You don't think there's potential for something like this to happen? I don't even know if we can go to the moon. I don't know what to believe, but I'm operating under the assumption that we can and that we will. And the Lord doesn't come back before all this happens. Ladies and gentlemen, this looks like a disaster waiting to happen. To me, this sort of feels like we're being told this is for exploration. We're being told this is for Mars. This feels more and more like the other movies that I've seen, that there's trying to find an escape plan, a place to live because of what is coming. 2030 just feels more than just the United Nations putting a goal to sustain, or even the United States putting a goal to live on the moon. 2030 is beginning to feel more like they know something big is coming and they don't want to tell us what it is. So we're getting ready to go to the moon, put a nuclear power plant on the moon, colonize the moon, and launch from the moon to Mars. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. First of all, some of you are going to probably say, we ain't gone to the moon. We've never been to the moon. Okay, let me know that. But if you believe that we are going, is this a good idea, bad idea? Just give me your comments, whatever you think. Don't forget to subscribe. And real quick, don't forget to go to Prophecy Conference 26.com. We need you to join us in Birmingham, Alabama. Y'all, many of you have decided to come and join us, and you've already got your ticket. Go there now. ProphecyConference26.com. ProphecyConference26.com. It is in the description below. And go ahead and get your registration in place. Find you a hotel. Hotels, by the way, if you scroll to the bottom of this page, you'll see we have 3 hotels that are within 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. It's probably 2 miles from the church, 15 minutes from the airport. There's 3 different hotels there. Come and be a part of this prophecy conference. It is going to be so perfectly timed to what is going on in this world. Yeah, it's only a couple of months from now, but there's no telling what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But it's also going to equip you for between then and 2030. Paul Begley, Tony Merkles, Joseph C., Alan DiDio, myself, and my wife. It's just going to be phenomenal. Also, don't forget to go to deception2026.com today, because when you go there, deception2026.com, today is the day. If you're watching this live or on the replay on Friday, today's the day this thing goes live. Now, you can buy it afterwards, but go ahead and get your tickets. $20, 6 hours. The countdown is on, baby. We're watching this right now. This is incredible. L.A. Marzulli, I'm a part of this. Y'all, my presentation that I do in here, I'm proud of it. I feel like it's one of the best things I've ever put together. A lot of video content that I could not show here. $20, you get all of these speakers. It's a superstar collection of people who all love God and are being used mightily in this. And you have a month to watch it before it's taken down. So you pay $20, you get access to 10 speakers, 2 complete movies that LA has put together for $20. And you get to watch it unlimited for a month. So go over there now, deception2026.com, deception2026.com. Also go to LarryRagland.com if you'd like to become a partner with us. So thank you for jumping on here. Let me know in the comments what you think about us going to the moon, building a nuclear reactor. God bless you. We ain't woke, but we certainly are awake. See you next time.
Help us build the big picture family. We're on a mission to wake up the world to what is really going on. Go to LarryRagland.com to give a one-time gift or become a monthly partner. Any amount blesses the entire big picture family. While you're there, pick up our book, I See Greatness in You. Browse our merchandise store, connect on social media, and get on the big picture mailing list at LarryRagland.com. Join us and be a part of the big picture family, where we ain't woke, but we are certainly awake.